How do you like this face? This gentleman's name is Rick, and I discovered Rick on an app called Sketchy. S-K-C-T-H-Y. They leave off the E. It's a wonderful app where there's a constant stream of photographs that people take every day, and it's set up for artists. If you see a face that you're interested in and you want to pull that off and get it on your desktop, you can, and then paint that person. So it's a wonderful, wonderful app. So this is Rick, and this is our subject for our final lesson. Okay, we're going to start out with Flo intermingling the colors with his face. We'll get to his beard later. And we're going to do something a little different. We're going to do wet on wet on this. We've been doing wet on dry. But, hey, that gets boring after a while, doesn't it? I got a little bit of blue tint on this, but that's not enough to affect. You know, watercolor dries lighter. You're not even going to see this once it's dried. Okay. There we go. We'll go a little into the beard, his mustache. All right. Now, with a brush that is moist, but not too wet, we're going to start adding some color at random. Or, you know, if you want to control where the color goes, hey, that's fine. Be my guest. Or you can do it random. As long as these colors aren't too dark. Because we want to have them light enough, remember, so that when we overlay our middle and dark values, those middle and dark values are going to show up and create a beautiful contrast. So we definitely want to go light. In terms of paint consistency, don't go any further than just getting to milk. It's mostly the consistency of tea. Let's get some bright color in there. It's getting a little too boring. And some beautiful, beautiful phthalo blue. I'm going to leave a little bit of a highlight on the bridge of his nose. Although he doesn't have a highlight, actually he's got a coarse shadow, so maybe I won't do that. I'll talk about that later. Coarse shadow. Okay. Let's pop a little red there, a little red here. Give him a little symmetry. Pull some of that up. Move that brush around. Dance that brush. I always like to dance the brush. So it looks like this was painted by a human hand. Guess what? This is not dry yet. My next stage, I'm changing things up a little bit. I've got nice clean water on my brush and a lot of it. I'm going to tap some of that into these washes. I'm hoping, no guarantee, never any guarantees in watercolor. That's part of the fun of it. So I've tapped in a few puddles of clean water, and I'm hoping as this dries, hey, maybe I'll get some blossoms. I'm the type of artist that embraces blossoms. Hey, I've got one more thing I want to do, and this is not dry yet. You don't have to do this, but this is fun. I've got myself a reusable metal straw. I'm going to go in there. These are puddles. I'm going to splatter the heck out of them by blowing on a straw. Oh, I'm loving that. Now the other side. Yes. Get yourself a metal straw. Only if you want to. Now, while this is drying, the face, hey, we can get into the beard. So, we'll treat it right now as a dark beard. Now, his mouth is here. I haven't got any lips in there yet. I want to get a red color, so I'm going to carefully make sure I don't go too much into the lips. All right. Now, I've just wetted my brush, and I'm going to pull some of this down like that. So I'm doing the hair. I'm not trying to get strands. You can get caught up with all this detail. Please don't do it. You don't need it. I'm going to mix some opera with the phthalo blue. Well, that doesn't look too opera-y. Now it does. There we go. We'll do a little mixing on the paper. There, that looks good. Move the brush around. But basically, this is going to be a fairly solid subject. Not too heavy on the paint. I'm kind of on the border between cream and butter. And it's really a little bit more loose and creamy. Hey, maybe even between cream and milk. Go right up into his sideburns. Boy, does he have sideburns. This guy's something else. Let's get a little mix of a little opera in there. Now I got kind of thick there. That's okay. But you don't want to spread thick paint everywhere. Otherwise it's going to look too flat. You know, the painting can't breathe. There's no transparency, no luminescence. Let's come. Hey, you know what I haven't done? Let's get ourselves a little into this. What's it called? It is called Permanent Alizarin. Sennelier. Kind of a burnt sienna color. Let's put a little in here. A little in here. Let's come up. Now, I'm getting a lot of the paint flowing down to the bottom. So what I'll do is with a thirsty brush, I'll pull some of that up because I don't want a super dark bottom border on the beard. So as I'm painting, I'll keep a third eye out for that. Okay. Let's get back to phthalo. Very careful around the cheek. Feather it. Very careful around this cheek. And take a little opera. Feather it. Brush. I'm going to soften the edges a little here on the outside. We do not want a hard edge. It just does not look good. Feather it a little more here. Don't have to copy it. You're just getting the visual impression. That's a wonderful thing that I like about my loose style. I want to punch in a little bit more, a little bit of darker areas of color in the beard, and I'm just doing all of this with phthalo. Pretty thick. Consistency definitely creme. And let's balance out a lot of this blue over here. Let's get a little bit more. Or let's take some of this alizarin and put that over on this side to balance it out a little bit. Now I have a clean wet brush. I'm going to feather it even a little more. He's got a long beard, so we got a lot of room to play with. More here, here. Bring it down even further. Some of this could be a little darker. Boop, 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 boop. Sound effects as I'm painting. Sometimes I do that. It helps. All right, I'm going to stop right there. We will, I was thinking about scratching out some highlights, but I don't want to do that. I want to show you the other way I'm going to do it with a different medium. Hey, wait a minute, I'm not done. I forgot the mustache. Same thing with the mustache. Going to feather it out a little on either side. That's where you do see a few hairs. And actually, they're not single hairs. They're clumps of hairs. Let's get a little opera in there. Distribute the opera. Do a little housekeeping here. There. And I'll get a little bit of my alizarin, which really doesn't look like alizarin. It looks like a deep burnt sienna, but it's a cool color, so I'm using it. Feather it. Take a wet brush, feather it again with some lighter hairs. Bring this right down into his upper lip. Okay, now I'm going to stop. We have some ear. I don't think we have to put a lot of detail, just a little color there. And a little color here. That's really all you need. It's even hard to tell whether they're ears or not, but I think that little bit of color takes them off here. Works. Okay, and then we also want, and I'm going to use opera for this, color in his, and all you're seeing really is his lower lip. Let's get a little color in there. Bring it down into the beard area. And just a little bit of color up there. It just doesn't take much. It still reads lips. Okay, now for the glasses. You want a lot of thick paint on your brush. You also want your brush to be saturated because you want it to flow, but at the same time you want the paint still fairly thick. So we're going to do the bridge of the glasses here. Just like that. And then very quickly we just kind of go across like that. Sometimes it's nice just to not overstate the glasses, but to just enough to indicate. And I do like the dry brush effect for that. Then we'll come down like that, like this. It doesn't have to be perfect. If your brush wiggles a little, don't worry about it. Then coming across like this, and down, and down. Then we have to do the stems. Now this, I've got a tea consistency, I've got a paint consistency of tea and not too dark. We're just gonna bring that down real quick like that. The other side will make a little darker. That comes down and then hides behind the side of his head. And also we want this to hide behind the side of his head. So I'm gonna pick up a little of that paint that went over. Bring it down a little bit lower, a little bit lower. And I think that should do it. Okay, now let's start from top to bottom. Let's give him some eyebrows. And I'm using turquoise. And the consistency is cream. Feather it out a little, right there. Okay. Nice and dark. Feather it a little. Show some of the hairs in his eyebrow. And then let's go for some opera. And this is still wet. So we're going to do a little mixing. Bring this opera around. Now, we're going to do this shape right here. It's not real dark. So I'm going to get a little more of the primary yellow, which really looks almost, it's heading towards orange. And I don't want it too thick. That comes around. Like that. Now I've got a little bit of the blue going in there. So before that dries, I'll take a dry, thirsty brush and pull some of that up. Don't get too upset if that happens. As long as paint is wet, you can always pull the paint off. I'm going to pull some paint off right here too. Okay, now let's go the other side with some of that primary yellow, and we'll do the same thing over here. That comes right down to the corner of his eye. And again, let's take a little bit of the opera. See, this is still wet. So we're getting it just a little bit darker in the upper part of the eye socket. We can even pull some of this around. Whoops, there that goes again. I don't want that. We better let that dry. We can add just a little bit of opera above his eyebrow. Let that mix a little. Same here. And I'm going to use opera and the primary yellow mixed together for this indentation. We need that a little bit darker. I'm going to add a little bit of phthalo. I want to get that indentation above his nose, and then the other indentation right there. And we've got another one on top, not quite as dark, not quite as deep, right up there. Very subtle. At the end here, I'm going to take off a little paint. I don't want it to end with a hard edge. Same here. Take off a little bit. Okay. And then let's take some more opera and bring this right up to that indentation. And I think what we'll do, oh, there's another little curvy indentation right here. I think these creases in his forehead definitely give him character. The top of his forehead is darker. So how about a little lavender? And for that, that's going to be opera and phthalo. But the consistency is going to be tea. So we're just going to get this a little bit darker here. Goes right across like this. And some over here. We won't quite make it as dark. I think I'm just going to add a layer of the opera. That comes across like that. And then with a wet brush, I'm going to soften this edge and just pull some of that down. Now, I've got some more traveling blue coming out, but with a wet brush, I'll pull that out. Sometimes you have to stick with it for a while, otherwise the paint keeps traveling. I think this can be just a little bit darker. And a little bit darker here. And I think that should just about, let's soften this a little with a wet brush. Okay. Let's bring this up at the top. There, that should do it. Now we're going to deal with that, what I call a coarse shadow coming down the center of his nose, right here. And a coarse shadow is usually a shadow where you don't expect it. You've got light coming from either side of the nose, but because the way the lighting is set up, the tip of the nose, or the bridge of the nose, which is usually the lightest part, has got some shading on it. So that's what's happening here. It's kind of neat though. So let's get that in there. A little lighter here. And then as it comes up, it thins out. And it comes up right to the bridge and connects both eyebrows. And maybe we'll make it just a little bit thicker up here. Got to be very careful. We're following the value pattern. Then it gets lighter again. Get a little around the nostril here. A little around the nostril here. Some underneath. Underneath. And we're going to let all that dry. And we'll come back to it. I'm just going to soften this too. Now we got some red here, so we want to distribute it throughout his face. So I'm going to put a little bit right here and right here. And this is the crease in his cheek. And as it comes down, it gets thinner. Same here. Comes down. And actually it almost disappears into his, we're almost losing an edge right here. We'll bring it down just a little bit. And then we'll take this, more of the opera, and we'll darken his upper cheek. And it goes right into this crease. Just darken it a little. And then he's got this dark part right here. Let's add a little lavender. So that's going to go, it's going to come out right here, and it flips up a little. Like that. Then I'm take the tip of my brush, and I just have water on it, and I'll pull some of this up even higher. A little bit there. This really is giving his face character. And then of course we want to do the same thing on the other side, on the other cheek. So we're going to come here, go right in the eye socket. This keeps coming down, and it gets a little dark. That crease deepens right here, and then it comes up. Okay, any more places where we can add opera? I think we can add a little bit of opera shadow. This is tea-like consistency on his upper eyelid here. I'll take a little of the paint out. That was just a little too dark. We can start defining his upper eyelid. I'm just using a little bit of opera. And he's got another crease. Let's get a little more lavender. He's got another crease right here, just using the very tip of my brush to get that going. And I'm going to take off some paint. I have a wet brush. I'm going to take off some paint right there, because I want a little more white of the eyelid. Let's get the nostrils in there. And those also can be, let's try the this dark alizarin. So we want a nice dark spot right here and a dark spot right here. And then I'm going to clean off my brush. I'm taking all the paint off, and we're going to pull this down towards the center of the nose. And same here, down towards the center of the nose and connect. Right there. And I'm going to pull some of this out on the outside. I'm going to pull some of this like that. And I might come back and darken the this upper part of the nose canal, but I think for now that that's going to work. I cleaned my palette a little because I'm thinking it would be kind of nice if we added a light yellow background. So instead of primary yellow, I'm now using Sennelier cadmium yellow light. Cadmium yellow light. So let's see what this is going to look like. And let's do it wet on wet. Let's keep the background nice and soft. Kind of like what we did with the face. Okay. Yellow. Pretty thick down here. It got the consistency of cream. But as we come up to the top, I'm going to clean my brush, just thoroughly get as much of that yellow off of it, go into here, and just pull that up. Yeah. Nice and deep. As I'm putting this together, I'm making that decision that this is going to be nice, deep yellow background. And as I'm bringing it up, I'm also deciding how high do I want it to be? Well, we're going to find out. Okay, I want to see what the other side's going to look like. So again, wet the paper. Super deep, bright, saturated. That's a better word, saturated yellow. Now let's bring it up even higher. Although now I'm getting it lighter. I'm going to put, I don't want it too dark. I'm going to put a blob of paint right there. Now you can do this or not. And remember, I had my straw, so here we go. Let's put a blob here. Okay, I decided to go for broke and going to do all this yellow. Must have hit a little bit of the glass. And I gotta be very careful now. Don't want to dissolve the glasses. A little bit of white peeking through. Oops, there we go again. Got to be very, very careful. Now it's time to do the eyes. What color? Well, California Vibe Watercolor Portraiture is all about expressive colors. So what the heck, let's give them beautiful green eyes. And I'm going to use my cad yellow light for that. Look how dirty my brush was. That's okay. And I'm going to mix that with phthalo. Okay, let's get those in there. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a highlight on this pupil. Now I overpainted his lower lid a little bit, so while the paint is still wet, I can basically pull that off, no problem. Okay, now the other eye. So we'll get this going. I'm going to add, well, while that's drying, I see above his eyebrow, I see a little bit of a dark area. I'm going to put that. I mean, this wasn't totally necessary, but you know, all these little details add to the quality and expression of his face. And there's a little bit of a cast shadow right there where the frames of his glasses it's casting a shadow on his forehead. So that's kind of cool. And let's just soften up this. See, now there's a place where a floppy brush I couldn't control, but I'll go in there and bring some of that down and take advantage of that. Okay, that's looking fine. Now let's continue to soften up on the outside here. Let's give a little bit of color here. That was a little too dark. It's got some color here, a little bit of color here. I'm standing back now and evaluating this. I'm going to swing that around. Let's take some opera. Just kind of swing that around. It's really, I'm really starting to bring out the form around his eyes. Let's soften that a little. Let's add a little more yellow here, or actually a little green. Greenish yellow. Get a little darker value here. I'm gonna get a little more warmth in his face, so I'm gonna mix some opera and the yellow deep. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. And let's put some of that coming off of here, a little in there. And then some of my cad yellow light there, some here. Okay, I think this is getting to be enough detail. Otherwise, I'm going to be fiddling with it and it's going to get old and tired. What should I do next? I'm going to darken up some more areas around his beard. This is butter. This is butter. And I'm kind of following his beard. I'm not worried about individual strands. I'm not worried about those white hairs yet. I can hardly wait to show you that. That's going to come later. Look at that. Really starting to darken that beard. I'm also going to take a little, I was mentioning that, and put it the darkest part. See, that really plays up his nostrils. I'm a nostril kind of guy. I like nostrils. Now that's a little hard. I want to soften it a little. I want to blend it a little, so I'm going to take my spritzer. And this is kind of scary, but on the other hand, if it works well. I'm going to just spritz it a little. Blend some of this. You got to be careful. See what's happening? Got to be very careful. This is another good example of controlling the flood. Oh, that softened his beard nicely. So now I'm going to let that dry And we'll see where we want to go next. Okay, I did something while you weren't looking. In other words, while the camera wasn't on, I did some more of these, I call these spider marks with my straw. I didn't invent this. I've seen other artists do it, and it works really nice for my portraiture. So let me show you one more time how that works. So I'm putting a little puddle right there. Okay, watch this. Boy, I hope you saw that. I'm going to try it at another angle. Let's put a puddle right here. Okay, now I'm going to come at another angle. Hopefully you'll see it better. Oh, that was a nice one. I like that. So that gives a little fun, different texture to his beard. Here's one other thing that I do. I'm giving you a lot of California Vibe secrets here. I will take some really thick paint and put it on my brush like this. Very, very buttery. And I'll just pop in. I mean, this is really thick. And pop in a few yellow highlights like that. I can even do that with the phthalo. Oh, let's really get it thick. And this is still wet. But because it's thick paint, it doesn't dilute or spread all over the place. Okay, I'll let that dry. I've got a smaller brush now because I'm going into fine detail around the eyes. So I need a brush that's a little smaller and stiffer. So I'm going to go in here and do this dark area, the upper eyelid. And then as I'm doing that, I'll get the pupil right there. And then as we come out towards the nose, I'm going to get it just a little bit warmer and redder. Towards the tear duct. Okay. And same here. And I'll get that pupil. Swing that around. And as I come out, that got a little dirty. I'm going to have to get a clean brush and redo that mix. It gets lighter. Okay. Now we also have this little crease in this eyelid. X-wings all around, goes into the shadow, disappears. And coming out of the shadow is the crease on the other eye. But it's getting a lot of light, so it's quite a bit lighter. Then the other thing I want to do is I want to do the iris. That's that ring on the outside of the eye right there. One here. I love doing eyes. Okay, so you can see that really brings them to life. I'm going to get a little more value there. Bring this down a little. The beard's still a little wet, so I'm going to let that dry. And then the last thing I'm going to do, I'll give you a little preview, is I'm going to use this little broken stick of Conte crayon. The beautiful thing about Conte crayon, and I'm going to bring out some of these white whiskers, is the fact that it's got a little bit of oil in it. So when you do put it down, you can do two things. If you put some of that Conte down, you don't like it, you can get a kneaded eraser or a regular eraser and just erase it off. The other thing you can do is you can put some lines down, and then if you want to paint the background beard a little darker, you can paint right over that line, and because there is a little oil in the Conte stick, it will repel it. So that's real nice. You can also take your finger and soften, and you can even buy a huge Conte color set. I'll show it to you here. Look at all those colors. It comes in a neater box than this. I made this. But you can get all these colors. It's going to cost you probably $150, but and the sticks are longer. I just break them off so I can use them better and more accurately. But they last for years and years, so it's worth the investment. You know what? Just to get the show on the road, I think I got. Well, let me feel it. No, it's got to be bone dry. The beard's dry. Now to put in his graying hairs. Rick is his name. Look at some of the different directions they go. They're going all over. I'll vary the pressure. I'll do some thin, vague ones, and then I'll press down and do some very thick and hard white ones like that I just did. And they go in different directions. Now, I don't want too many. I think with watercolor, less, I know this is a hackney phrase, but I really believe it, less is more. Let's put a few in here, a few going into the mouth there. Very light pressure on this stick of Conte. Little light here. I'm going to step back and look at it. And you know what? I'll come back to it again tomorrow. But I don't want to overdo it. So I'm going to stop right there. Let's lift this out of the way. Take a bigger look at it. And I think that looks good.